بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد, welcome brothers and sisters at the Masjid Salama community here in Columbus, Ohio. Barakallahu fikum. I'd like to first and foremost begin by thanking the administration and all those who strove in making this gathering for the next 2 days possible. And secondly, as it pertains to our topic today, and the title of the first lecture being the Western culture and its detrimental effects on marriage. And as we know, that the Western culture is something foreign for the Muslim, for the true believer that knows his and her religion, that the Western culture and that which it glorifies and that which it promotes and celebrates is for the most part something that is foreign to our deen. Foreign to our deen. And the enemies of Islam, they are constantly plotting and scheming to throw us off the Sirat al-Mustaqim. And in many ways, they attempt to do this. For anyone who pays attention to all that is surrounding us, especially here in the West, all over social media, in the entertainment world, that everything that they promote is in an attempt to throw us off the straight path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from the greatest of affairs in which they attempt to do this is marriage. The institution of marriage. And that is because they know that the foundation of marriage and the institution of marriage is that which keeps societies together. Marriage is a basis for the society. If the family is strong and united and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, starting with the father and the mother, and then they raise their children upon that and they cultivate their children upon that, then the society likewise will be one that is good. However, when the family becomes broken, when the parents split and divorce, and the children grow up without either one of the parents not in the picture, then this is the beginning of the downfall of societies, whereby all kinds of immorality, lewdness, evil and corruption enters into the homes. Enters into the homes. And so the enemies of Islam, they work hard and tirelessly in destroying the institution of marriage. And there are many ways that they try to do this. And that is what, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we are going to discuss today. The different means that they use to destroy the family and to destroy marriage altogether and to cause us not to have any care or concern or desire to want to get married. And so many of us who may be in school, in university, working, and in our careers, many of us who think that we simply don't have a desire to marry because that is just our preference, let's not kid ourselves. There's definitely a brainwashing that is going on, and there is something that is affecting us by living in these societies. There is a call that is out there that is causing us to feel like this and to think like this. If we are truly honest with ourselves, then we would admit that the reason for us in the times that we live in now, as opposed to 10, 15, 20 years ago, even those who lived in these societies in the West, they would get married young. I remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was not strange to find someone getting married right after high school or at the beginning of university or college. That wasn't something strange. That was a norm. And today the 18, 19, 20-year-old, early 20s, as soon as you bring up the topic of marriage to them, they see it as something so far-fetched. That marriage is something for those with white beards. That youth don't get married. That being 18, 19, 20, being in university, you are still too young to get married. That is the mind state of many of the youth, both brothers and sisters. That they believe you must go to university first or college and graduate and get a job and save who knows how much money. And then when they're in their 30s and mid-30s, that is when they think they are ready for marriage. That is when they think they are ready for marriage. And that is those who would even consider marriage. That is the case of those who would even consider marriage. Whereas many do not even want to get married at all. Many do not want to even get married at all. And so in today's topic, or today's lecture, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to discuss the means that the enemies of Islam use in order to cause us to not want to get married, and likewise the different plots and the different things that they do to the institution of marriage itself. How even those who do get married, although they are Muslims, that they adopt the Western culture and they apply that to their marital life, and that they wish to be married in accordance to the customs and to the ways of the disbelievers, not following the Quran and Sunnah and their deen in how they live their marital lives. And so there are two main movements out there that are responsible for this brainwashing. This brainwashing that wishes to cause us to detest anything related to marriage. And for the sisters, that is feminism, making you believe that men are your enemy, and that your entire existence on this earth is to fight for women's rights. Right? To fight for women's rights, even if those are rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given the woman, but rather to busy you with believing that you are oppressed, with believing that your religion has not given you that which honors you and raises you in this life and the next, but rather busy you with that, and to make you believe and have this sentiment that your brother in Islam is your enemy. And so the war that exists between the disbelievers, the men and the women from amongst the disbelievers, we've now adopted that as Muslims. And we are now fighting one another and hating one another, similar to that which has occurred with the disbelievers. And then for the brothers, it is the red pill movement. The red pill movement that has caused many of the brothers likewise to detest anything to do with this aspect of having guidance and rules and regulations as it pertains to every aspect of life. Look to the Jews and the Christians and see if they have detailed rulings and regulations as it pertains to marriage, and as it pertains to divorce, or as it pertains to the laws of inheritance. Even something as small as we believe it to be small, but it is great. Even the etiquettes of how you use the bathroom. Akramakumullah. Even the etiquettes of how we use the bathroom, how we enter the bathroom, how we relieve ourselves, how we clean ourselves after using or answering the call of nature, after coming outside of the bathroom, all of these aspects, we have rules and regulations. How we purify ourselves, ghusl and wudu, and that which necessitates wudu, and that which necessitates ghusl, and the like. We have all of these things within our deen. No other way of life has these things. No other way of life or religion has these things. So then it is unfortunate to then see Muslims seeking guidance and seeking happiness in other than their deen. In other than their deen. From the ways that the Western culture causes us to not want to get married, and the tactics that it uses, other than the first one that was mentioned, which was to pin men and women against one another with these new modern day movements, causing us to hate one another and lose trust in one another, and believe that each one is out to get the other. That men are here to harm women and women are here to harm men. It is that they convince us with that and they brainwash us to believe that. Secondly, it is the spread of the LGBTQ movement. The main agenda for spreading this lewdness and this immorality of the LGBTQ movement is to cause there to be less procreation. That if men start marrying men and women start marrying women, then what happens? No one has children. And the kuffar know this. And the kuffar know the attitude of Islam towards this movement, and that it is impermissible in their deen, in our deen. They know this. And they spread this, and it is from the most, from the greatest things that they spread in our time today. All over social media, all over movies, all over TV shows, that there always has to be some character that is from the LGBTQ community. And always they are going to make you have some sort of soft spot for that individual. This is all psychological. This is all psychological, so that the attitude of the Muslim and the hatred for the abhorrent sin that these individuals commit is minimized in the heart. And that they portray, from the tactics that they use to cause you to not really see how evil it is that they don't present to you, or they don't cause you to think of it from the angle of the sin itself. They cause you to think of pride, and it's just some people that are happy, right? That's why they call it pride. They're just happy. Everyone has rights, right? Everyone should be respected no matter how they choose to live. Love is love, right? All these slogans that they promote. All of that to make you believe that this is something normal. This is how they normalize it. And then now you find Muslims falling into this. Now you find Muslims, wal-iyadu billah, even at one point may have been practicing, and then years later you find them part of this community. You'll find a brother who was in his thobe praying, you find him in the masjid, you find him in the durus, and a few years later now you find him having a boyfriend all over social media. Wal-iyadu billah. This is a reality. This is a reality. Rather, those who have memorized the Quran and leading Taraweeh, and then years later having a boyfriend. How does that happen? Except by a constant brainwashing and a constant attack and a plot against the Muslims, however, at large, everyone. And anyone is vulnerable to this ideological attack. And so the goal behind this and the agenda behind this is then to lessen procreation, lessen having children, and to spread immorality and lewdness in the society. And when immorality of this nature and corruption of this nature spreads, then evil will only continue to spread. And then when there is a nation or nations of corrupt individuals, then what we find then is people who will only be following their desires, but have no longer having intellects, just like animals. Another method that is used, and it is prevalent on social media, is these new modern podcasts and social media influencers or personalities who constantly speak on gender issues. Are men and women equal? Is there such thing as 50-50? Who is the leader in the relationship? Should men be the leaders? Are women the leaders? Are they equal in that? And all of these different types of discussions. And so, especially in the COVID period, when a lot of these things became popular and everyone was at home and idle and not really doing much, many of the Muslims started to watch these things and started to adopt their ideologies. And then you find now Muslims, any men, starting to believe, yes, 50-50. Why will I marry a woman who is not providing anything in the household? She has to pay some bills. And what does that mean? That means then now you found for yourself a way of life or a way of living that is other than your deen, that is foreign to your religion. Because what does our deen say? Is there anything in our deen that states 50-50? That's a question for you guys.
No.
Is there anything in the deen that says that a woman has to provide and pay some bills? La. However, when we indulge and we watch these types of things and adopt their views, this is what happens. And then when you cannot find a sister that is willing to do that, then you will never get married. And so these are from the tactics then to cause us to not want to get married. That they make you believe that that is the right way, that that is how you should go about marriage. What happens then is when people adopt these views, and let's say they do get married, and there are majority of them or many of them who don't get married at all, but then what does happen is some do get married and they have these views. And what happens is then there is a clash. There is a clash between the husband and the wife. And those marriages don't last very long. That is why we find now those who we've heard a month ago, 2 months ago getting married, and then a few months down the line we hear so-and-so got divorced and everyone is shocked. Everyone is shocked. That is very common now. That is very common to see and hear. That those who just recently got married, they got married in the summer, by the winter they're no longer married. And it is because all of these views that are now appearing, and for the Muslims, those who are adopting these views, it is causing them to clash with their spouses, and those marriages are ending. And that is because they, either both of them or one of them, is following a way other than the way of the deen. Following over social media all the time, or in the news and any media outlet, that they should not concern us. And we should actually strive never to read into these things and look at these things. Because it causes then, what it causes is for you to start loving that type of lifestyle and start desiring that kind of lifestyle. And then what you do is then, as a sister, you'll have an image of your Prince Charming, right? That man that you're looking for, that specific man that has to have these specific qualities. And if he's not doing what that celebrity is doing for that female celebrity, then you don't want anything to do with him. Right? It causes you to love this lifestyle to the point where you start becoming unrealistic in selecting a spouse. That you want your marriage to be based on how those individuals are in their relationships, which mostly is haram relationships. And you find them with a different person every few months. And so this is from the ways then that causes us not to get married, or that if we do get married, and from the angle number one, that if we, before marriage, you become so unrealistic in what you're looking for the brothers, for example, all these social media influencers and these immoral women all over social media, you want a woman that looks exactly like them, with 30 different kind of surgeries, completely plastic. You believe that a sister has to look like that, and if she does not look like that, then I don't want anything to do with her. Right? You become unrealistic. You become unrealistic. And for the sister, for example, he has to provide this, and he has to provide that, and he has to provide that, and look like this. And if he does not, then I don't want anything to do with him. So then what happens when the brothers all have unrealistic expectations, and the sisters also have unrealistic expectations? No one ends up getting married. Nobody ends up getting married. And then if they do get married, what happens is that marriage doesn't last long, because each one is expecting that same type of lifestyle, or they're expecting that from their spouse. And if they don't get it, then they believe that they're not happy in their marriage. That's what starts to happen. And it may sometimes not even be celebrities. It may be just other couples that they know, or that she knows, her friends and their husbands and the like. And they may be living lifestyles like that. And now if she's not getting that kind of lifestyle, she's comparing her life to others and her marriage to others, and then she's no longer happy in her marriage. The problem with all of this is that many of the young Muslims nowadays are not learning what the purpose of marriage is altogether. Why do we even get married? And that is why we fall into these traps of shaitan and from the enemies of Islam. That because if we knew the purpose of marriage, and the benefits of marriage and its value, then that is what we would marry for. And then we would find happiness in that. But when we are lacking knowledge in this aspect, and all we are doing is indulging in social media and watching these people's lives, then it's like a double-edged sword. Whichever one you use is going to cut you. On one end, it's that you lack knowledge of your own deen as it pertains to marriage and its virtues and its benefits. And so you don't base your deen and your perception on marriage on those things. And on the other end, you are falling into the glorification of the lifestyle of the most immoral of people. The most immoral people of society. And now as a society, when you see majority of the people, Muslim and non-Muslim, following these individuals, and day and night paying attention to their life and their lifestyles, that is why we see the corruption in society that we see today. And all these immoral acts that we're seeing all over the place, all of this spread of evil that we are seeing, all goes back to this aspect. It all goes back to this aspect. Another harm also from the Western culture and how it molds our minds into how we think and how we see marriage and how we see relationships, is that these TV shows and movies and things like that we are constantly watching and exposing ourselves to, is that most of the time you will find that the way they depict relationships is either boyfriend and girlfriend in most cases. You will find maybe a couple that has children, however they're not married. That is the standard of a relationship. Or that they're not even looking for marriage. Oh, sorry, they're not even looking for children. They're just dating forever, 10, 15, 20 years dating. And then when they have 3 or 4 children, then they decide to get married afterwards. Because marriage and children has no relationship. There's no relation between the two for the non-Muslims. However, for Muslims, then we know that there is no path to having children except through marriage. Except through marriage. And so when we constantly watch these shows and we see nothing but turmoil in relationships. The husband is cheating on the wife and the wife is cheating on the husband, right? Or that we see them fighting and bickering over nonsensical things that are not that big of a deal. Or that we see divorces and like a divorce battle and lawyers and all of these things. This is all we see in these TV shows and movies. The mother taking the kids away from the father. This is the stuff that is portrayed all the time. It is rare that you will find a married couple happy with their children and everything. Two-parent household, that is not glorified. That is not glorified and represented in Hollywood. And what does that do when you're watching these shows all the time and watching these movies? That becomes your norm. You start to normalize that, and when everyone starts to normalize that, what happens? What happens is we start to accept that for ourselves. We start to see it as normal. So if we get married in January and then we get divorced in March, that's perfectly fine. It's just like a breakup. Because relationships, the standard of a relationship in the Western culture is dating. It's not marriage. And so when we constantly see, especially when we keep watching these celebrities and everything, that every other month or every few months they're with a different person and breaking up is a normal thing, then we start to view divorce as just a breakup. We don't see it as a family breaking up. We don't see it as children losing, one of the parents, or that they don't have both parents in the household, and how that affects the children growing up without both parents in the picture. We don't look at it from that angle. We just see it as a breakup. We break up and on to the next one. That is because, although we may not see it, we may be practicing and have memorized the Quran, we go to durus and all of these things, we immerse ourselves with deen. However, deep down, the things that we have that are normalized for us are these things. We've normalized these things. So when we hear about it, it's not something that is abhorrent now. Now when we hear about people getting divorced so quickly, it became so normal that we're not even shocked anymore. Whereas years ago, if you were to hear that someone got divorced within a few months, it was like the most unbelievable thing. It was like the most unbelievable thing. Another aspect that harms our outlook and our perception of marriage is now leaving the Western culture and all of that. And it's something very unfortunate that we see that is very prevalent now amongst the Muslims. This is something specific to the Muslims now, and how we ourselves hinder one another from marriage. And that is a lot of these Muslim, once again, podcasts or YouTube channels and some of these social media channels that speak on marital issues. People that are not qualified in any professional respect, nor in any religious respect. They're not people who've studied the deen. They're not people who can speak on these affairs, yet they are dealing with affairs of marriage, personal matters, people's private lives, things that should be taken back to major scholars, that even students of knowledge have allowed people like this to even have a platform or to even have a voice. And we don't warn against, we don't warn our friends, and we don't warn sisters, don't warn other sisters, and brothers don't warn other brothers to not listen and pay attention to these types of people. The more we lose hope in marriage and no longer want to get married. Now, as it pertains to how the Western culture affects the institution of marriage in and of itself, and how, unfortunately and sadly, when the Muslims adopt these ways, and then they start practicing it in their marriages, why we are seeing all this turmoil and sadness in marriages. And marriages in the end simply failing. Because we've adopted the ways of the disbelievers and how they dictate to us how relationships should be and how marriages should be. And so from the first and foremost principles that the West promotes, especially the feminist movement, is that men and women are equal. Men and women are equal. Now, in the deen of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives rights and duties based on the nature in which He created us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create men and women different and then simply just make them equal in every aspect. That is not from hikmah. However, from the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that He created men in a certain fashion and that He created women in a certain fashion. He gave men certain duties and He gave women certain duties. And He gave men certain responsibilities and He gave women likewise certain responsibilities. All of that because that is how He created them. And so the responsibilities and the duties that He gives each gender is based on their nature. It's based on how they were created. And so each right or each responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives each gender is suitable for them. And they are able to fulfill them. And they are able to do them. And so in Islam, we don't have anything called equality in terms of responsibilities and duties and the like. However, we have justice. Islam gives us roles and responsibilities, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just as it pertains to men and women and their status and their value. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, obligated upon the men to be providers. That is due to His nature. They are the ones that are more aggressive in nature, physically stronger in nature, can deal with the hustle and bustle of the outside. So they are the breadwinners. That is their responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make it a responsibility of the women. And the home and the affairs of the home becomes the responsibility of the woman, because that is in their nature, being nurturing, motherly, especially with regards to the children. This is from their nature. It does not mean that the husband doesn't help with children or doesn't help when he is able around the house, etc. However, as a role, as a asl, that is how it is. However, what does the West promote? The West promotes for us that men and women are equal in every aspect. That men and women are equal in every aspect. In the deen, in our religion, we do have an aspect where men and women are equal, and that is if they do good deeds, then their reward is the same. That if they do good deeds, if a woman prays and a man prays, they are equal in their reward. If they fast in Ramadan, they both are rewarded equally. And so from the aspect of being rewarded, yes, for certain acts of worship, yes, we are equal. However, as it pertains to our roles in the household and in society, then that is something different. So the deen of Islam takes into consideration the nature of men and women. The nature of men and women with regards to responsibilities and roles. And the Western culture abolishes that altogether. They rid of that altogether. And so their equality is not based on anything. Their equality is not based on anything. Rather, it stems from an atheistic and agnostic, any secular mentality. That, as is the same for all of their other beliefs, that now we have in Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that legislates for us these things. We believe, we do such and such, and we fulfill these roles because it is legislated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the musharri' for us, that gives us our legislation. And so we are servants of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, so we follow them. That notion does not exist when it pertains to the kuffar. They don't follow any type of doctrine as it pertains to their roles in society and in life. They don't follow that. And that comes from an atheistic belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no governing over life. That is from their belief. And which movements follow that doctrine? Feminism, secularism, liberalism. All of these movements have this same thing in common, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in the equation as it pertains to how we live our lives. That we live our lives how we wish, how we want. That no one can tell us what to do. No one can dictate to me as a sister or as a woman what my role is. Likewise, a brother, no one can tell me that I have to provide for a woman. No one. All of these views don't come from just you being sophisticated. And you think because you're educated that you've figured out something special. No, you've been brainwashed. You've been brainwashed to believe that there's a way to success and happiness other than your deen. Other than your deen. And you find many brothers and sisters who go through the university system, if they don't have a basis in their deen, they become affected by this type of thinking and this way of thinking. And so you'll find brothers then if they're looking to get married, coming to a sister saying 50-50. Sister, we're living in times now where things are difficult, inflation, right? Things are not as cheap as it was in the past. You gotta, bring in some money too. So the views now changed and everything changed because this is the mentality or the belief that we're adopting. Whereas if we knew our deen and how we see life and how we live our lives was based on our religion, then these things would not be seen. After promoting equality and saying that men and women are equal, what happens in many cases is another step which is even worse than the first one, which is role reversals completely reversing the roles between men and women. That the woman now wants to be a leader and have an authority in the household. She wants to be submitted to and listened to. She wants to challenge. She believes it's from her rights to be able to challenge her husband. And that when he makes a decision for the household, as long as it's within the realm of the Sharia, that is not something impermissible, that she has to have a say. How dare you, make this decision, that decision, without discussing it with me first. All right? And so we have now role reversals. And this is also from the agenda of the Western culture, is to not only make men and women equal, but also to now have authority. The woman now have authority over the men. You'll find that many times. Some brothers who, without even knowing, that his wife is actually the authority in the household. Yeah, he just may be, the typical brother going to work here and there, but she's the one that makes the decisions. And he just sits there and allows that to go on. What happens in that type of relationship is that even if a sister believes that is where her happiness lies, in making decisions and running the household, obey him and show your children that he is the authority, then his word will have weight in the house. When he speaks to his children and tries to prevent them from falling into harm and that which is evil that is out there, they would do so if they saw that from their mother. But since they did not see that, now they likewise are dealing with him in the same manner. And then now when things get out of hand and those children are falling into things that Allah musta'an, no parent ever wishes that their child fall into. Now everyone is panicking, the mother is panicking, blaming the father and all kinds of things that cannot be fixed. However, all of these things stem from somewhere. So these are from the harms of these role reversals. If everyone just played their role And if everyone in the household played their role, we would see success, just like we saw it in the time of the past. If we look at the household of the Prophet ﷺ, and we see how the households were in that time, where the father was the breadwinner and the one who was in authority and yani being submitted to, and that's how it was. The respect from the children was there, the honor, how they honored him was there, and how they likewise honored the mother. And if they saw otherwise, then we would have seen that. However, we see that today. And we only see that today because we've left that path of following the Salaf and following our deen first and foremost, as it pertains to our roles in the family. And just as a quick point, yani, we said that the secularist movement and all these other movements in general, the Western culture, and how they depict roles and how men are just equal to women and men are just equal. And so there's nothing that actually, there's no source for where they derive their roles from. We mentioned that we derive the roles from the Quran and the Sunnah. We have many ahadith, many ayat in the Quran that state to us the role of the husband, the role of the wife, the duties of the wife, the husband's responsibility of providing shelter and clothing and food and the like, and the woman submitting to her husband and obeying her husband and not allowing anyone that he dislikes into the home, and to preserve herself and guard herself, and all of these aspects. All of these things are outlined for us to follow. Once we deviate from that is when then problems enter into the household. And now, when these things happen, that the roles are reversed, and that we believe now that men and women are equal, and years pass, and we have children, right? And then that family, as a result of these things that we've adopted now, these ideologies that we've adopted and began to practice into our marriages as Muslims, and then those marriages end, and those children now end up fatherless. And the father is not in the picture for whatever reason, whether it's the mother that's preventing him, whether it's whatever reason it may be, divorce occurs and the family is now broken. Now, the people who deal with social matters, and in the West especially, and they look at some of the social ills that exists in society, they've determined that a very high percentage, meaning 75 to 80% or more, in many aspects, some of them ranging even in the 90 percentile, of those who are incarcerated, meaning those who are in prison, those who suffer from drug abuse, all kinds of drugs, fentanyl, Percocets, alcohol, marijuana, whatever it is, all kinds of drugs, those who are suffering from drug abuse and drug addiction, those who are suicidal and have suicidal thoughts, meaning youth. All of this that I'm mentioning now is youth or young adults, those who are of these categories. Homelessness, those who have become alienated from their families because of the lifestyles that they're living or these things that they're falling into, and then you find them downtown sleeping on the street and the like. So homelessness, mental health issues, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and all other kinds of mental health issues that a lot of the Muslims are suffering from today. Unemployment, not being able to work and not working at all for years and years. Lack of an education, not having passed even high school, only having done some of high school, grade 9 or grade 10, and then dropping out of high school. And other social ills. Does anyone know what the common factor is between all of these things? All of these things that I just mentioned now. Incarcerated, those who are in prison for any kind of crime, violent crimes or otherwise. Drug abuse, suicide, homelessness, mental illness, unemployment, lack of education, just some high school. The common factor between all of these things is that those people who are in these categories come from broken homes. The father is not in the picture. They come from a family where only a single mother raised them. That is the common denominator. A lot of these young Muslim men who are in jail, the father is not in the picture. For whatever reason, his parents divorced. Homelessness, likewise. Those who are addicted to drugs and fall into drugs. Those who have suicidal thoughts. Those who are suffering from some sort of mental health disorder now. Those who can't get a job or don't even have the zeal or the eagerness to even get a job. They don't have the motivation at all. Just simply sitting in their house, binging TV shows for years and years and eating junk food and all kinds of things in their mother's basement for years and years, not having any aspiration in life whatsoever. All right. And lack of an education, have no desire to study anything. All of these things, the common denominator is a single mother raising that child. And when I say these categories, I don't mean a small percentage. 75% to more of those who are in jail, those who are suffering from drug abuse, those who are homeless, those who don't have an education, all of these things come from a single parent household, meaning a mother. A mother is raising. A mother cannot raise a boy on her own. There are things that a child needs, a boy especially, from a father that a mother cannot give. Likewise, there are things that a daughter needs from a father that a mother cannot give. A mother, when the children are young, yes, she's the one that is usually closer to her children she's the nurturer and they need, mercy and gentleness and softness at the beginning stages of their lives. However, when that child reaches an age of distinction and needs to be disciplined and needs to be set aright and guided into the adulthood that they would become, that is the role of the father. The father keeps the children in line. For the daughters, their father is like their protector. A girl needs to see a father and feel like she's protected, feel safe. She needs to see an example of a good man, a man who treats her mother well, etc. So that she now knows what to look for in a man when she reaches the age of marriage. If she does not have that, where will she find out, or where will she figure out? Seek for marriage someone who will raise your children to be upright. That is the most important thing. That is the most important thing, because after you pass away, if you do not have righteous children to pray for you, that is a great loss. And from the benefits, and we'll learn in the next lecture, the virtues of marriage, from the benefits of having righteous children and righteous offspring, is that after you pass away, they will make dua for you. That they will make dua for you. But if you raise children who are not righteous, then they'll forget about you right after you pass away. They'll forget about you right after you pass away. And so that is before you even get married. And those who are married should take heed from the things that we just mentioned now with regards to the statistics of the youth that are suffering in these societies now because they come from broken homes. Because they come from broken homes. A lot of the youth that we see nowadays suffering when it comes to drugs, suffering from mental health issues, suffering from all these things, a lot of it stems from developmental issues. These children did not develop properly psychologically because of the issues that they suffered in the home and because of what they were missing in the household. Boys missing their fathers and girls also likewise missing their fathers. And so the parents who are married, yes, marriage is difficult. Yes, and no one is saying that keeping a household together is a easy task. However, because with every difficult task in our deen, there is a great reward. With every difficult task with regards to our deen, and that's from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it is a great reward and there is a great reward for it. There's a narration from the Sahabi Abu Umama radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, whereby he said, and this is to depict for us and illustrate for us how shaitan strives to cause there to be discord between husband and wife. And so to know that, yes, when you go through difficulties and you're thinking about divorce and breaking up your family, know that this is from the tactics of shaitan. That the shaitan would not be more happy and it would not be happier than to destroy your family and to cause you to split. So Abu Umama radiallahu anhu, he says, verily, shaitan comes to your bed after your wife has made it and prepared it and throws a stick, a stone, or something similar on it to make the husband angry with his wife. So if someone finds this, meaning if someone now finds that they've become angry suddenly, have become angry with their wife, let him not be angry with his wife, for it is the work of shaitan. Know that shaitan is haris in causing you to split, in causing you to destroy your families, from the most little of things, from the smallest of affairs. The shaitan works hard to destroy families. Likewise, a well-known hadith of Abu Musa radiallahu anhu, whereby he said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, when shaitan, meaning Iblis, awakens in the morning, he dispatches his troops, any other shayateen, saying, whoever misguides a Muslim today, I will dress him with a crown. So shaitan dispatches, he sends off his shayateen, seeking for each one of them to misguide someone, a Muslim. And the reward is that they will receive a crown on their head if they do so. So this one will go out and say, I did not leave him alone until he divorced his wife. I did not leave him alone until he divorced his wife, whispering to him, she is this and she is that, and she doesn't listen to you, and she has an attitude, and why didn't she make your food when why didn't she make your bed, why didn't she, making you think of your wife constantly in a negative way. Shaitan whispers. This one will come and say, I did not leave him alone until he disrespected his parents. Another great sin. Disrespecting one's parents is from the major sins. Tayyib. Shaitan will say, a Muslim is about to be good to his parents. This one will come and say, I did not leave him alone until he committed idolatry. And he committed shirk. Shaitan will say, you. He will say, you. Another will come and say, I did not leave him alone until he committed adultery. Shaitan will say, you. This one will come and say, I did not leave him alone until he killed someone. So murder, another major sin. Shaitan will come and say, you. Then he will dress him with a crown. The order is in this narration is incorrect, but however, the one who is crowned is the one who, we mentioned first, caused the Muslim to divorce his wife. That all of these other things, falling into shirk, murder, all of these other things, shaitan did not crown them. Rather, he crowned the one who caused a man to divorce his wife. That illustrates for us how much shaitan values the broken family. And that is why that shaitan, the one who caused the man to divorce his wife, was the one that was valued the most and honored with a crown. And the reason for that is, it does not mean that someone divorcing his wife is worse than shirk, or worse than murder, or worse than these other things. What it means is that when shaitan causes a man to divorce his family or his wife, and the family now becomes broken, all of these other sins become inevitable. because the family is now broken. And this is just one family, and then another family, and another family. And when divorce increases in societies in this nature, what happens is all kinds of evil spreads. All kinds of misguidance happens when the household is broken. And so we shouldn't understand this hadith to mean that divorce is worse than murder and the like, but rather that when divorce happens, we see it today, that some boys who grow up without their fathers and become lost and end up in the streets, they start falling into murder and other kinds of crimes of that nature. And so when families are broken, expect everything. Expect everything, especially in these societies. Especially when you live in the West, where all of these things are prevalent, all of these, immoral acts and all of these evil things are prevalent and popular and present. If the family is broken, then that just opens the door for all kinds of misguidance. We find Muslims leaving Islam, apostating. We find Muslims becoming a part of the LGBTQ community. We find Muslims committing suicide. We find Muslims today overdosing from drugs in their own homes, some of them. We find Muslims killing one another. We find all kinds of sins. We find anything you can think of. Every sin you can think of. At the top of it, kufr and disbelief. We find Muslims becoming Christians. All of this exists. So, if now that doesn't illustrate to us, and that doesn't tell us the importance of marriage, and the importance of keeping the family bond strong, and keeping the family together, and how parents should strive to the utmost of their ability to be patient and to overlook as much as they're possibly able, for the sake of their children and for the sake of preserving the household, so that these children do not fall into these types of things that we're talking about, these social issues that we're talking about, and become statistics, so that they don't turn into statistics, drug abuse or suicide or incarceration and the like. We'll conclude with that with regards to this first lecture, inshaAllah ta'ala. In the next lecture after Salat al-Maghrib, it will be with regards to the virtues of marriage as it pertains to al-Islam, which will be a counter to what we mentioned in this lecture. So after we've mentioned in this lecture all of the agenda of the West, and how they deter us from marriage, and how they cause us to detest marriage and dislike marriage, or that we adopt their ways and the way of their ways of thinking, and we adopt that and we practice it in our own marriages, causing our marriages to fall apart. After we've now learned that agenda, then in the next lecture, inshaAllah ta'ala, we're going to learn the virtue of marriage in Islam. So now that we've learned the evil agenda and now we're aware of that, now in the next lecture, inshaAllah ta'ala, directly connected, we will learn the benefit of marriage in and of itself as it pertains to our deen, and the value in it, and why that should act as an encouragement for us and a motivation to strive and hasten to get married. We'll conclude there, inshaAllah ta'ala, and we'll see everyone back after Salat al-Maghrib. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.